The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests as individuals, and do not necessarily reflect those of advertisers or sponsors. This show is intended as education and commentary only. The producers strive for verisimilitude, but nothing said on this podcast should be taken as fact by the listener or viewer without performing due diligence. While generally safe for work, some language may be considered offensive by more sensitive viewers or listeners.
All right, cans on, mic's up, level's good. You got me over there? All right, let's roll.
This is Booth to Booth, your direct line to the latest in home voiceover production, with your favorite home VO experts throughout the industry, all across the internet, and all around the world. Booth to Booth is brought to you by the Narrowband Broadcast Network, NBBN. The focus is on you. By Andrew Scott Media, making your media matter. By BOOTHSTUFF, unique VO fashion and swag that's as loud and proud as you are. And by the kind support of our viewers and listeners all around the world via KOFI. KOFI, helping you give back to the creators that help you the most. The session clock is running and all the mics are hot. So let's patch in and get this session started. Here's your host, VO coach, narrator, and producer, Andrew Scott.
And hello, and welcome back to Booth to Booth. I am your host, Andrew Scott, and today I am going to be speaking with someone who is going to be helping me dig through some very important to us in the VO industry recently, some very important topics. I am speaking today with Robert Sciglimpaglia, and I'm trying to do that justice to my Italian friends. Deep apologies ahead of time, mea culpa. But Robert is an attorney. He is a practicing attorney in Connecticut. Is that correct, Robert?
That's correct.
I got that part right too, but he is a lawyer that deals with numerous things, including real estate and workmen's compensation. But for our purposes today, he deals with entertainment law. He is a member of SAG-AFTRA as an actor. He is a voice talent himself. And more importantly to us, he has written the Amazon #1 bestseller for at least a while. And it is something that all of you should go out, get a copy of and read, because it is voiceover legal. Robert helps people navigate the, at times, very tricky landscape of entertainment law as it deals particularly with voiceover. Robert, thanks so much for joining us today. We got a lot to dig into this morning.
Yes, we do. Thanks for having me.
Let's start off, and also full disclosure, when I looked up Robert, and I'd known of voiceover legal for a while, but when I looked up Robert's information, I saw that face and I went, you look familiar. And then I looked at the name and I went, that name looks familiar. And I paused for a second and I pulled up my former clients folder. And Robert and I are featured on the same project from 2016, Eric Kaslov's short feature. Her name was Samantha.
Turning now to local news. It was 1 year ago today that the body of 13-year-old Samantha Harris was found near Jefferson Park. The person or persons responsible for the crime have yet to be found. Authorities encourage anyone with information to come forward.
I was
Samantha's
both
mother...
shocked and a little bit delighted to see that you and I have a work credit together.
A common credit, correct?
Yes, exactly. How did you navigate your way into acting and also VO particularly?
So I started VO back in 2005, where really what I did was I just I had always wanted to get into acting. I was practicing law, about 10 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And no, actually more than that, like 15 years. And so I was kind of in the routine, and I was like, I really want to try to live my acting dream, see where it goes.
So it was law. It was law first. You didn't go into college for acting and accidentally become a lawyer.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, I went to law school. That was my plan, to go to law school. being practical and I don't want to be able to, acting's not going to get me anywhere kind of thing.
Right.
But I always wanted to try it, so I actually took adult ed classes in voiceover,
Okay.
and then I realized that I can be practical because it's doable. It's you can actually make some money
Sure.
doing voiceover work. So I jumped in. I started doing it. I took some classes. I did my demo, set up my website. Got all my marketing materials together. Got my studio together, and the first gig that I landed right out of the gate after doing auditions was the PBS American Experience
Yeah.
TV series.
Yeah, you were in the PBS production of Hijacked on National Public Television.
We heard the knocks on the door and the purser Abraham Rain calling us on the intercom. He told me there are a male and a female hijacker. They demand that you should open the cockpit door, otherwise they will kill and blow up the plane.
Correct. Yes.
And you
Scott.
literally just walked into that. That was your first gig.
That was my first gig. Yep.
That's not a bad for your first time up the bat.
No, that was pretty cool. I went to Broadway Sound, in the 30 Rock.
Yeah.
That's where they do all the post-production for Saturday Night Live.
Right,
So
yeah.
I was in
Famously
their studios.
so, yeah.
It was pretty cool to start out that way. I didn't realize that I kind of thought that was normal.
You were I'm either just this good or I am the luckiest son of a gun there. You were also featured on a really kind of famous commercial.
Mom, really? Is this necessary?
Happy graduation, sweetie!
Should we tell him that?
No, let him tire out first.
Jogger, check out my sweet.
Was that just another? Did you find it yourself, or did you get pointed to it by way of an agent, or how did that happen? And what commercial was it for people?
Yeah, so it was a Super Bowl commercial back in 2012.
Okay.
Chevy Happy Grad.
Right.
And,
so millions and millions and millions of eyes on you.
Yep, and it's still like even this year it was featured in the greatest commercials. The greatest commercials on CBS.
That's where I got pointed to it as. It was oddly enough, I wasn't even connecting with you yet because of the Super Bowl. I read one of those articles about some of the greatest commercials in Super Bowl history, and there was that one, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then a couple of weeks later, it was, oh, I got an interview with this guy. I need to.
It was featured this year as one of the best in that decade. I think there was only 2 or 3 or 4 maybe.
It is hilarious, and you were great in it. You played that deadpan dad exactly perfectly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah, and the way I got that was that was your question. Was I got that through a fellow actor. Actually, I had done a play with the woman who played the mom, my wife, in that spot. She and I had done a couple of off-Broadway plays, so she recommended me to the writer / director, and I didn't even audition for it. I just got the part, and I mean it's a whole story behind that too, because it wasn't a Super Bowl commercial when it started out.
Right.
It was
they happened to use it that way.
Well, it was supposed to go into a contest for one of the film festivals in Texas. I think Austin. I forget.
Okay.
But then when Chevy saw the commercial, they pulled it from that and they put it into the Super Bowl contest.
Oh.
And it ended up winning that. So then that's how we got onto the Super Bowl. So
however,
you never know.
However you find the gold, exactly. Chevy just looked at this and went, "No, we got different plans for this. Let's set this aside."
Yep. And then it turned into a SAG spot, so I got paid, SAG national.
And so that
rates.
was your inroad into SAG. Was that it? Was that your path into SAG?
I had actually just joined before. Before that. That was right before the merger, so I had just joined AFTRA because I had done. Remember that show Pan Am?
Yeah,
on ABC.
Yeah,
I had just done that, and so I had to join for that.
So you went into AFTRA, and then the merger happened, and boom, there you are, newly minted SAG AFTRA.
Exactly, and I could have joined because of that, because it happened right simultaneously. But I was already in, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, or get re-sponsored or anything like that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, one of the things that is top of everybody's mind, and trust me, viewers and listeners, we are covering it, is, all I've been able to talk about on my properties for about the past 3 months is artificial intelligence and how it is impacting or potentially impacting the voiceover industry, both by way of people who are in SAG-AFTRA and independent talent. And we will be talking about that a little bit. But, one of the other things, and I am one of your buyers of your book, Voiceover Legal, and I found it to be just an immense trove of useful information for people all over the VO spectrum. Was it just a natural outgrowth of your law practice that you went, oh, I really should write a book about this? Or how did that come about and your motivation for writing the book?
So the way that it came about, it's it's a funny thing because in the law practice, everyone knows me as the actor.
Yeah.
In the voiceover business and the acting business, everyone knows of me as the lawyer. So when people knew that I was a lawyer, they would ask me questions. Should I set up an LLC? This thing happened to me. What should I do? So what I did was I started writing. I wrote all those things down, and that's how the book was born. I just all the questions, the frequent questions that I answered over and over again. Plus, there was case studies in there too. Those are factual case studies.
That's what I found the most valuable, was knowing that the information I was getting was coming from case law. This was something that's already been through the machine and has a legitimate result that's useful to people.
Yep. But those are also real facts too. So those are also people that come to me and ask me, those are the scenarios that they give me,
right?
The resolutions. So that's where it came. It came from other voice actors and actors, that had issues, and that's where of course I don't use anyone's names, I don't breach any confidentiality with anybody.
Right.
We'll tweak the facts a little bit if we have to keep people anonymous. So,
right.
Unless some people actually gave me permission, so I think I may have used a couple of people's identity in there, but that was because they said it was okay.
Right.
So, but that's where it came from, and that's I'm working on the AI chapter right now, so if we start talking about it, I'm glad I didn't do it yet because it changes so fast. So.
Well, and you better hurry up because it's going to change 5 minutes after you put the final period on the end sentence. It's a moving target, and it's going to stay that way for a while.
Yep.
And it is, it's available now. Why don't you tell people where they can go to either preview the book, get the book, and all the associated information?
Yeah, sure. They can go to Amazon to get the
surprise
the electronic version, or they could go to voiceoverlegal.com and they can get the PDF version or the paperback.
Is there an audiobook version, or is there one happening, or
no, there's no audiobook.
I'm not gonna say anything about that.
Only because there's all the case studies and things with all the cutouts. I think it would be very confusing.
I had to do a book for a large medical nonprofit. That was actually, back in the day, was my very first audiobook, and it was 400 pages of URLs and bullet points, and impossible to read things without sounding like you're regurgitating alphabet soup. It was quite the lift. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to do a couple kind of setup questions from my followers and my audience, and then we're going to get to the intellectual rights and good information that, of course, people love to wake up to. My user Brian B asks, he's curious about your thoughts on typical protections for startup business operations, like liability insurance versus kind of not having liability insurance. What are your thoughts on, if you're a new talent, what are some of the minimum legal mechanisms you should have in place as you start out on your independent VO career?
So I would set up an LLC versus doing insurance at the beginning, because the LLC will protect your personal assets from your business assets.
Okay.
Right. And then with the LLC, what you could do with an LLC when you first start, it doesn't matter what your income is. It could be $1. It could be $-. It could be you could be in the whole $5,000 with all your demos and your equipment
in investments.
It doesn't matter, because as you start to get more income, you can switch over your LLC and just designate it to be, as for instance, an S corp
Right.
or a C corp. You just
Mhm.
file a form, the IRS,
Right.
and switch it. So you don't need to worry about having, some people, you'll go online, you'll say, oh, you should maybe making 100 grand before you set up an LLC, that's ridiculous, in my opinion. Yes,
Mhm.
it's good for taxes.
Right.
So you switch it over to an S, but anyone who's serious about doing voiceovers as a business should treat it as a business. So I always tell
Yes.
this story, like clients will come in, they'll ask if they should set up an LLC. And I say, well, if you were setting up a pizza parlor and you were coming into me, I wouldn't tell you, let's see how much pie you sell in the first year to determine whether or not you should set up an LLC. Now, I'm
Right.
going to tell you, set up your LLC right, set up your structure right now. Get your EIN, which is your employment ID number, your tax ID number.
Yeah.
Get all that, get your bank account, get it all set up. Because you can only, it's very inexpensive to do, and you could always dissolve it if nothing happens. But
Right.
then you're protecting yourself. That's a very cheap form of insurance.
Yeah.
It protects your personal assets.
Yeah.
Now, whether you should get liability insurance, that really depends on if you're going to set up a studio where people are going to be coming in.
Yeah. Other talent coming in to your environment, to your property.
Right. Because then you would have to either check with your homeowners to make sure that they're covered.
Right.
Or get a rider, or
yeah,
just
and
get
I was
a
just going to
business
say,
policy.
to be clear, not every insurance company will back you if you are operating a business in that way and having, the liability there. As far as I understand, insurance companies are allowed to judge what liability they're comfortable with in covering. So
Right.
not everybody can suddenly just have somebody come up and use their professional equipment in a designated professional space and be covered. Somebody slips going into your booth, cracks their head, it might be an issue.
Exactly. Some policies cover home businesses, some don't. So you need to
Right.
find that out. Like,
Mhm.
because some homeowners policies will cover home-based businesses, but
Mhm.
others won't. Others will exclude that, say
Right.
we'll exclude home-based businesses. So then you need to get a rider, either get a rider on your homeowner's policy or just get the business policy. Maybe cheaper, actually, just get a business policy.
Yeah, I was just
Business
going to
policy,
say.
normal business policy also will protect you from libel and slander,
Mm,
which is another thing that we as voice talent need to worry about sometimes, because if you're reading a script that you didn't write and it's
Yep.
libelous or slanderous to somebody, then you
Mhm.
get sued, you're going to be covered under your business policy.
Right.
So,
And that can happen even if you're saying somebody else's words. If
Yep.
the person who is being referenced decides to pursue legal remedy, you as the voice talent, unless you are protected in some way or form, you
Right.
could be brought into that legal action through honestly no fault of your own,
right. It's
minus
'cause
possibly due diligence.
it doesn't even, I mean, well, if you do your due diligence, then you'll make sure that your contract covers you to make sure that the producer is going to, defend you if you get sued. If you don't
Right.
do your due diligence, you still may end up getting sued, and then you're
Mhm.
going to be on your own.
Right.
You're going to, your own devices to try to get out of that litigation. But anyone who, it goes for anyone that, libel and slander goes for anyone, not that just writes the copy, but publishes the copy. And if you're the one that's publishing the copy by speaking it or putting it
And
over the airwaves, so
that's
they can sue
a
you.
point that a lot of talent don't understand. Independent talent don't often understand the fact that we often think of ourselves as talent first. We might think of ourselves as producer, but very few of us actually understand that when you use your voice, even at behest of a paying client, you are also considered a publisher.
Right.
That
You're the one that
is,
publishes.
yeah,
Right.
because generating a file and handing it off is a form of publishing.
Right.
So it's important that people understand that's got a legal weight attached to it that you need to be aware of as a provider of that service. So,
Right.
one of my other followers, John Lano, asks, so commercial clients often need audio yesterday, as soon as possible. They'll reach out and they say, "Oh my gosh, I really need this." How do you, my user John asks, how do you suggest getting new clients to sign relatively detailed contracts that actually do perform on the behalf of the voice talent, without turning off the client or pushing them to someone else who's faster and might not ask for all the T's to be crossed and the I's to be dotted. Do you have any thoughts on the rapid turn and burn kind of environment that we often find ourselves in versus what we really should be doing for ourselves as providers to protect ourselves contractually and legally?
Well, first of all, it depends on what kind of job it is.
Mm-hmm.
If it's $50 job, I wouldn't worry too much about getting a signed contract. And as long
Right.
as it's in emails, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's an email exchange as to how
Digital
the rate
paper
is,
trails
and
count.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the easiest thing to do though is just do a digital contract. I mean, you can an e-signed contract is absolutely legal and binding.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do is I have a little, or some of my clients, they have a template.
Sure, a boilerplate kind of.
This is what the job's all about. This
Mm-hmm.
is when it's the turnaround. This is how much to pay, and then it says, click this box, and you're agreeing to my terms and conditions, which is attached to the
Sure.
contract. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to have those things. You don't have to hammer them out for every single job. It's right there. That's just
Right.
the memo, which is and the memo just is quick. It just lays out what the job's all about, all the,
Sure.
the appropriate terms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the easiest way to do it.
Right.
It's really easy to do an e-signed DocuSign or whatever
Right.
service you use, or even Adobe Acrobat now does it
Yeah,
automatically.
exactly. You can even have your signature scanned in there and just hit the button that says sign this document, and boom, it's done.
Right.
It's as easy for them to do as it is for you to generate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really easy. So it shouldn't be that much of a hassle. It doesn't have to be a written, in paper where you print out, sign it, scan it.
Yeah, notarized with stamps.
Notarized, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Is there some, and this is a question from me, because I've fielded this question myself, and again, full disclosure, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. I've only played one with my voice once. And so I often have to caution people that, my advice on law and legalities is that of an individual, not somebody who is on bar or has even read an entire law book. I haven't. But
non-professional.
Not exactly. Yeah, amateur sport lawyer. One of the things I think that is, and I'm asking you, I don't know if it's a misconception or if it is a real thing, and let's clear this up. There are a lot of people that feel that if you make a declaration, if you set out terms of use in some way, shape, or form, that a client or a potential person to hire you doesn't refuse, that those terms are legally binding. And this comes to play, and this is going to come to play more in our discussion of AI. Lines at the bottom of your email footer setting out terms saying this can be done, this can't be done, things like that, use rights and prohibitions. Is that accurate to say that if somebody hires you and they've seen that material in communications that they can be legally held to those, or is there, what are your thoughts on that?
So you still, whoever is trying to enforce their contract has to prove that the other side agreed to the terms. You have to prove there was a meeting of the minds.
So there had to be some active consent to that provision that you are saying is legally binding on your side.
Well, yeah. I mean, so what would happen is if you go to, say you bring those emails to court and say, look, this is what it says on the bottom of my form.
Mm-hmm.
The question to the person would be, did you see these?
Right.
And if they say yes, okay, it's binding. If they say no, I never saw
those. If they just claim ignorance, I couldn't see those tiny words on the bottom of your email.
Right. Then you're going to have to prove, well, yes, you did, because look, there's your initials right there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the burden comes back to you
to
prove it. So that's why the best thing to do is just have them check off a box or put initials somewhere saying, I agree to your terms and conditions, stated on your website or stated on the bottom of the form or whatever.
Right.
Just have them initial it or X it off.
Some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Because you have to prove that they agreed.
And this is straying into that whole TOS end user license agreement world that we all live in now, where nobody reads them, and yet, we so often use services on our phone or on the web that says use of this service constitutes acceptance of the following laundry list of stuff that nobody reads. And
exactly.
Yes.
there never was, and there never will be, as far as I know, a requirement that you have to read the contract.
Right.
It never was a requirement in law. You're assumed to have read the contract if you sign it.
Right.
So that's your problem. So if you sign a contract and didn't read it, under the law, that's not an excuse. It's not an excuse
Yeah.
to say I didn't read it. Well, too
Mhm.
bad. Why'd you sign it?
Yeah.
You need to read it, right?
And
So it's the same thing with this. Like you're assumed to have read the terms and conditions if you agree to the terms
right.
and conditions, because that's how the law always was, and it always, it probably will always be. So
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly the only way it can really remain fair. I mean, the burden of responsibility has to lie somewhere, and if you agree, even overtly agree, but haven't performed due diligence on your own behalf, the law is going to look at you and essentially give you that, well, kind of.
well, I mean, because how would the law,
I don't know
deal
how
with
it
that?
would work otherwise.
It would be like, okay, so you're in here saying you didn't read this contract, but you signed it. So what am I supposed to do?
Right. Right.
There's
Yeah.
your signature there saying you read it. So therefore, that's good enough evidence for the court.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the buck has to stop somewhere,
Right.
and it's
I mean,
it's at your doorstep. Sorry, this is how
people
you play the game.
People do raise that defense all the time, but it's you have to prove, there's something goes above and beyond not reading the contract.
Right.
So you'd have to prove something, that the terms were illegal. So
Mhm.
maybe if those terms of service are illegal, they violate a law,
Right.
then the court would throw it out. That's fine. So even if you signed it and read it, and it was, the legislator says that, this is illegal,
Right.
it will get tossed out. So,
But you have to do for yourself first, as a business person, SAG-AFTRA or not. You need to be performing due diligence on your own behalf and actually
right.
investing some time in reading the copy. And reading the copy. You can tell what I do all day. Reading the contract. And that's reading the contract is something that you can do to also learn more about this industry. And,
Right.
you can, it's very surprising that you can often be presented with a contract, even as a non-represented talent. You can be presented with a contract that immediately makes you go, and you can very often, as a talent, get back with that contractor and say, look, this provision here I'm not comfortable with, this provision here I'm not comfortable with. We either rewrite this or I'm not doing your work. And you'll
Right.
be surprised at how often those contracts will be amended to answer your demands. As talent, I think, particularly independent talent, we're really, really wary of being difficult.
Right.
Well, who really gets raked over the coals in that dynamic? People who aren't willing to be difficult on their own behalf.
Well, it's not difficult. I mean, that's the perception, but it's not.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. They fear
Right.
that perception because I want that contract. I want to build my career. I don't want to be told no again.
There's a distinction between being difficult and just being a good business
being smart.
person.
Yeah.
So being smart, right? So
Yeah.
like if you were to go into a session and starts telling the writer what they meant and how they should rewrite their copy, you're being difficult.
Yes,
But
I would agree.
if you're just saying, look, I don't want to give up my rights in perpetuity on this contract. Let's figure out what the real usage is going to be. How are you guys going to use this? And let's just put this in the contract. That is not being difficult at all, because most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, the people that you're dealing with at that level of recording you, don't even know what's in the contract.
You're right.
So they didn't write it. Some
No.
attorney wrote it. So
Yeah.
if you bring it to their attention, they'll realize that it is way bent on their side, and they're willing to make it more fair. So,
And the
but you have
truth
to
of the
raise
matter, right? Exactly. If it just lays there in the dark of a corner, but it's also that we as independent talent need to protect ourselves because, again, that word in perpetuity means something. And, we've got so many instances of someone who did an honest day's work by way of their voice and signed off, did a full buyout, no rights, no residuals. And then the next thing you know, 4 years later, we've got Siri, and that person was only paid for a day's work, and their material was resold, and Apple used it, and they have received nothing from Apple for that usage.
That's the AI concern now, but even if they just re-air it,
sure,
that was always the concern. You know, that's been the concern forever in
Yeah.
voiceover. If they just use it again
Mhm.
5 years from now, because the people that recorded it left, they're not around anymore, and the
Yeah.
new people that came in listened to the bank and we like this, and they use it again.
Oh, let's use that. Let's use that. So
that happens quite often. So
Yeah.
that's even a more, even before you get to the AI issue, that's a more common concern. So
Mhm. And before we go to the break here, this is just a real quick question. One of my users, MSL, asks, they're new to VO, and they're wondering about, is it prudent really to go all the way when you're just starting to copyright your brand name, your logo, and your other intellectual property that you're going to be offering? Is it really prudent to take those steps and incur those costs right at the outset of a career that might or might not turn out to be something?
So copyright, let's talk about intellectual property. You got
Yeah.
copyright, you got trademark. Copyright is for a writing or a recording or a work of actual piece of art.
Yeah.
It's a
Something
work.
generated.
So it would be like your recordings,
Mhm.
right? So that's one. Trademark would be to protect your name and your logo.
Mhm.
All right. So the reason you do those is so that other people can't use them without your permission. So if you're going to come into the business and you're coming up with you have a unique trade name or a unique slogan, I don't know, the voice of God.
I think it's been used. I'm going to put a TM and a register up here because making sure we're not.
I can look. It probably is not registered, but who knows? So if you wanted to register that name so that other talent can't use it, that's the reason to trademark. So
Mhm.
if you're concerned at all that other talent will be using that name and it will affect your brand, so you'll have to rebrand yourself,
Right.
then you should trademark it.
Mhm.
That's the answer to the question. So so let's just say, worst case scenario, you use the voice of God and someone else 2 years down the road starts to use the voice of God. Is that going to make you have to rebrand? And do
Right.
you care if you
Right.
have to rebrand? Right. So if the answer is no, I don't care if I have to rebrand, then you shouldn't trademark it. If the answer is yes, I care, I spent time and effort to brand that, then you need to trademark it.
Right.
Right.
And
So that's the answer. And if it doesn't matter when,
right.
at the beginning of your career, in the middle of your career, if you're starting out with that brand name, then you should trademark it.
Right.
At that point.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're really building your brand on a slogan, and you know that you're pretty confident that as the future unfolds, that's going to be central. It's going to be a tent pole to your entire brand. Yeah.
You need to trademark it.
Yeah.
If you're just using your name, you don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to trademark your name.
Right.
So,
Yeah. What about, well, I tell you what, I'm going to save that until after we come back from this break. This is the Narrowband Broadcast Network. I'm Andrew Scott. That, of course, is Robert Sciglimpaglia. We are on Booth to Booth, and we'll be back in just a second. Yes, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room. Don't go anywhere. Bye-bye.
Booth to Booth is brought to you in part by BOOTHSTUFF.com, the home of the world's most unique VO casual fashion and swag. You know, this thing that we do is pretty unique. So, slap on a Booth Stuff t-shirt that tells the world, or, your cat, that being in a tiny room by yourself is where you truly belong. Shirts, hats, pants, mugs, and more. Well, not a lot more. Actually, that's pretty much it, anyway. Booth Stuff is the one and only home for VO-centric swag that lets the world know what you do with that mouth of yours. So, head on over to BOOTHSTUFF.com and get something that shows the world who you are and what you love to do. BOOTHSTUFF.com. Loud and proud.
And hello and welcome back to Booth to Booth. I am Andrew Scott, and I am talking with the author of the book Voiceover Legal, Robert Sciglimpaglia, and a fellow actor and a fellow voice talent. And before we get to the gigantic robot elephant in the room, we're going to talk a little bit about copyright and how it really pertains to voiceover artists, voice talents, and voice producers. When we jumped to the break, we were talking about trademarking. And Robert, you said that you had some wisdom that you wanted to share about copyright. So
yes. So copyright is also, first of all, the producer, the writer are going to own the copyright to the script.
Right.
So you're not going to worry about that end of it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to worry about copyright from our end to protect us. So every sound recording that you recorded in your studio, you can copyright those recordings. Those recordings belong to you. The second that you record them, doesn't matter if the script is copyrighted by somebody else. The recording belongs to you.
Right.
So this is key to how what I represented Bev's standing versus TikTok in her case.
Which, by the way, people go look that up.
This is key because what we did in that case was, since there was no contract assigning who owns the copyright, right? So if you have a contract that you sign with a client, they say they own the copyright, you can't do this. But if you reserve the right to ownership in the contract
of your recording,
or if there's no contract at all, you own the copyright. So in Bev's case, she didn't have a contract. She'd never written contract. So TikTok began using her recordings. So what we were able to do is we registered those recordings with the Copyright Office, and then that's now copyright infringement. And it's a strict liability law. You don't have to prove.
Right.
All you have to prove is who registered it.
Right.
That's it. If it's registered with the Copyright Office, then you can file an infringement case. So if there's an incidence where you're not paid, for example, and there's no contract assigning the copyrights, you can copyright the file.
You still can. Yeah.
File an infringement case against the non-payer. You can ask for a lot more than what you were going to get paid in the first place in court.
Potentially, yeah.
And the other thing is that even if there is a provision in a contract that says the copyrights are assigned the client, what I put in there is I say that the assignment will be effective upon payment. And then you still own the copyrights until they pay.
Up until such time as you get the money.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's another way to protect yourself, because they're not going to own the files that they want to own.
Right.
And they think that they own
until
they pay you.
To be clear, you are talking about on an individual basis actually recording a copyright, registering a copyright for something. I imagine this can't be done post hoc. This can't be done retroactively after a certain period of time, because a lot of us live in a full buyout, no rights, no royalties world. Can you clarify that? Do we have de facto copyright coverage of our recordings, or do we have to take some action?
Yes, let me clarify. So you own the recording as soon as you hit record on your computer, and as soon as you hit save.
Okay.
It's copyrighted. Okay. In order to sue for infringement, however, U.S. law says you have to register with the Copyright Office. So you have to register that. You have to send a copy of that recording into the copyright.gov, fill out the form, pay the fee. Then you can sue for infringement. Right? So if it was something that was published, something that's put on TV, radio, it
YouTube,
says you have 90 days. 90 days. What the law says.
Okay.
90 days from publication that you have to register it. But if you own the file and it was your file because there was no contract, you can register it any time.
Right.
Because you're just registering. You already own the copyright.
Right.
So you can register it and then bring your action. And you can't bring your action until it's actually registered.
Right.
It's a Supreme Court case. So you have to wait until they actually issue the certificate saying that it's gone through and it was registered. So there really isn't a time limit, especially if it's unpublished. If it's unpublished, and I would say I always argue, and the law is if it's only on YouTube or something like that, that's not published.
Okay,
That's
interesting.
it would be like a book.
Right.
That's what they're talking about, or an album. That's what they're talking about for publication.
Right.
That their client published it,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So if it was an audiobook and it was released, that's public. That's date of publication.
Sure.
So, but you can still, even after it's published, if there was no contract allocating who owns the copyright, the client can still, you as the client can still copyright that file.
You still got your hands on the steering wheel in some way, shape, or form.
Because you own it. Right, you own it. So you have to transfer that ownership.
I think we all still operate under this misconception that digital things aren't real, that digital things aren't actual things and or property and or intellectual property. And as you said, as soon as you hit render, as soon as you hit record, you're actually generating a real thing. Its tangibility isn't in question. Its creation and its provenance is.
The sound recording is yours. Think about it this way, because this is how copyright law evolved. A record company hires or signs a band, right? The band wrote a whole bunch of songs. They bring the band into the studio to record all their songs. The recordings belong to the recording studio,
right?
Whoever recorded them, the masters, versus the actual music,
right?
Belongs to the artists, unless they
sign away their rights,
saying they give up their publication rights. But there's two separate copyrights. It's the actual creative song drafting, and then the actual recording, sound recording. So the masters belong to the studio always,
right?
Because the idea is that they paid for them. They paid for the recordings, so they own them. And the music, the actual whatever came out of the artist's brain, the creative part, that belongs to them. So
this goes down to this whole thing of people don't understand. And to be clear, music rights and publishing rights and all that stuff talk about a deep field of weeds for people to get into.
Because, it's obviously more complicated,
right?
Sorry,
you've got mechanical rights, reproduction rights, broadcast rights, all that. But people tend to still be operating under this misapprehension that musicians make money from their recordings. That era is pretty well gone now. Musicians typically make money on touring and on their merchandise, things that they sell, that they manufacture. But they don't own their recordings. Sometimes they don't even own their published music anymore because they'll sell the publishing rights in order to get a better deal with the studio, and it's a lot of mess. But I think
that's different. So just to compare it to voiceover, the copy is like the song. So the copy is it came out of the writer's mind. The recording from your computer is like the master. Just to make it easy.
Right.
It's a lot easier. Voiceover is a lot less complicated. There's
very true.
You don't have to worry about selling your publication rights. All of those things. But what you do is you assign your recording to the client. That's what it says. If you're assigning ownership or your copyright in the contract, that's what it means. You're assigning your rights to the recording that you made in your studio to your client. So you're giving up your rights to it.
Well, this is all the more reason to know a good lawyer like you. But
it's important for AI too. That's why I mentioned it.
And that's exactly the pile of weeds we're heading into right now. You were recently featured on my VO compatriot Paul Schmidt's show, and Paul recently featured an Irish voice talent. I hope to be speaking to them as well sometime in the near future, because their story is both quietly fascinating and quietly horrific, and not so quietly horrific, if I'm being honest. This voice talent was pointed to a generative AI platform that is doing text to speech, and their fellow VO worker went, "So you sold your voice to an artificial intelligence platform?" And they went, "No, I didn't." And they followed the link. They went. They heard the voice, and it was I won't say unmistakably because that's a term that has some weight in the legal world, but it sounded very, 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 very underlined, very close to their voice.
Right.
And it was very interesting, too, that this voice talent is a dark-haired Irish young woman. The stock photography image that this platform used was a admittedly lovely, silver, gray-haired Asian woman. And the description underneath there said something to the effect of neutral, middle, young Irish. And there's no question to anybody's even remotely educated ears that this woman, this VO provider, had their voice used for this product without their informed consent, or just without being informed of it. Consent is a separate topic that I'm sure that we're going to delve into. Robert, I don't think that it's unreasonable for me to say that this is the beginning of a wave that is going to be very uncomfortable. What I've been telling people is that voiceover people, particularly independent voice talent, but also SAG-AFTRA represented people, voiceover artists have the uncomfortable distinction of being some of the very first canaries in the coal mine when it comes to generative AI. I'm just going to open it up. Thoughts. What is going on? Where are we headed with this? And what are the legal consequences, and what are some of the legal protections we can start taking?
Sure. Well, so this is the end result that we're seeing now, because this has been happening for years and years and years, where voice talent have been recording their voices.
Yeah.
So this is like the third or fourth generation of this. So way back, I was the director for the sessions for the Bixby voice for Samsung.
Yeah.
So
I still got my Bixby right here.
Yep. That's I directed that talent. So the way that those were done, the way that those voices were captured for AI. Well, first of all, AI is a very broad term. So
yes.
let's just say cloned voices or synthetic voice, because
sure.
that's what it is for voiceover. Because if you use the term AI to mean voiceover to somebody that's in the AI field, they don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So they're like, what AI?
That's like saying the term machine. It's like saying the term math. Math means a lot of things and a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I think we are headed into a time, like you indicate, where we need to start speaking specifically and correctly about things.
So synthetic voices, that's the term that I like to use, or clone voice. But back when they did Bixby, what they used to, what that was kind of the beginning stages or Siri, they would hire a talent to go into the studio for months and record pages and pages and pages and pages for 4 hours a day of gibberish. It was really gibberish.
Yeah, it was honestly, it was alphabet soup kind of stuff, word salad stuff.
Yep, and they would do it different emotions.
Sure, because they were harvesting phonemes and sound.
Right.
They weren't doing anything contextual yet.
Exactly. So that was kind of the beginning of the way it started. And then they would get paid a lot of money, 6 figures, whatever. Paid a lot of money to be the voice. Then after that, once they figured out how to pull all those sounds together, like you said, the big four decided they were going to create their own banks of voices. The big four: Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft.
Yeah.
All right, those guys decided we got to do this. We got to do these AI voices. We got to do synthetic voices. So what they did was they put stuff up on Craigslist saying, "Hey, how'd you like to spend a day for $50 gift card?"
And they would bring them in those. You still see those on Craigslist today.
Right. So they brought them into the studio. They recorded days worth. They give them the $50, and that was it. Right. So then they realized, these voices don't really sound that good.
Yeah.
Because it's garbage in, garbage out. So they said, we need to start hiring voice talent for this. So that's when it went to the next generation. It was around, I would say 2019, 2020.
I was just going to say, it was about 5 or 6 years ago is when the shift really happened. And they went, we actually need to use some people who sound like they know what they're doing.
Exactly. So they would
literally
basically
sound like, yeah.
so they get all the emotions correct and they get the performance correct. So they would pay, $2 to $5 grand a job.
Mhm.
Voice Town were doing the same thing, reading, but they were signing contracts, signing away all their rights to their copyrights,
Because you know
saying
what,
that it's going to be used.
$2,000 to an independent voice talent sounds like a payday, and
Right.
they're not going to kick up a lot of dust. And I mean, one of the things that I understand too is that a lot of these, even from the big four, they were not the name on the buying contract.
Correct.
It was second,
Right.
third
Correct.
generation contractor who went out,
Correct.
got this voice, did the pay. The person had no idea they were doing work for Apple or Microsoft. They were doing work for, voicerecognition.co.uk or something like that, and didn't realize their stuff was going any further.
So there was two factions. So yes, Microsoft, Apple, they were hiring outside studios.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were in the US. A lot of them were out in China.
Right.
Some of them were in Europe. So some of the contracts would say stuff like, I think this was the earlier ones, like Bev Standing's contract. You're going to be doing reading for translation for Chinese to English.
Yeah.
Like that's what the contract would say.
Yeah.
Then they switched though. Then the studios were being more explicit, saying you are recording for Microsoft. You are giving up all your rights. This is going to be used by third parties in the future for synthetic voices. You'll be saying stuff that you don't agree with, possibly. You'll be using this for commercials. Like it would spell it all out in the contracts for the same amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
So I called those contracts. I was reviewing all the different ones for all the different, all the different generations. So I called those contracts career suicide contracts. That's what I was telling my clients. You're committing career suicide by signing this because you don't know where this is. We still don't know where this is being used. Like companies don't know where this stuff's going to be used. So there's no crystal ball to know where this is going to go in the future. Yeah. So, you're going to be competing against yourself with your own voice.
Yeah.
So
that's a sick reality to it. Yeah.
I would always recommend don't sign this. Right. Mm-hmm. And I remember most of the time the talent did, most of the time they didn't sign. Sometimes they did sign. I remember one time we did a negotiation with one of these companies, and I did a negotiation with one of these companies in China that where the client really wanted to do it. They wanted more money for it. So we asked for like 10 grand, I think. And I remember the response email started out with the words, ha ha.
Oh, wow.
Ha ha. We will never pay that amount of money. Like that's what it said.
Yeah. Does that translate in Chinese? Ha ha. Yeah. So my question here then is this. We're all going to have to be dealing with this now.
Yes.
We just are. There is, as I often say to my listeners and my followers, humankind has a really terrible track record of getting genies back into bottles. And
AI is here to stay.
It is. And we're in this place now where we are all having to get comfortable with the adapt or die model of doing business. And we're also, as talents and producers, trying to find ways to possibly work with artificial intelligence, not necessarily synthetic voices, but, I am starting to use certain artificial intelligence tools in creating content and helping me with some of my writing. And I find it's got utility. I'm not going to lie and say it doesn't. And I'm going to say it in the same way that, Bixby on my phone has utility for me.
Right.
Yes. I think it would be foolish and disingenuous to say otherwise, no matter what I do with my voice for a living.
Right.
But in this struggle to find ways to coexist with Skynet, as it were, and I almost wore my Skynet t-shirt today, but I decided to fly my own brand. What are some things that we can do, Robert, that will help act as a bulwark against misuse, against being taken advantage of? What are some of your recommendations here?
Sure. Yeah, before I answer that question, I want to give a little more background.
Please.
Because it's relevant to the answer to this question. So it's still illegal. It always was illegal, and it still is illegal for someone to take your voice without your permission and use it. Be a synthetic voice, your real voice, that you're protected by likeness laws. So that is illegal.
Can you speak to what likeness law is so people have a slight understanding of that?
Yes, it's illegal to use your likeness for commercial purposes or any purpose without your permission.
And it's not just your visage, your likeness is also your voice.
Your voice and your picture, yes. And that's back from New York law. I studied this in law school. Like from years and years and years ago, this came up from photographers taking pictures of people on the street and putting them on, magazine covers, whatever. That's where the likeness law started. So that is still illegal. So when you see people coming out saying my voice was used without my permission, I don't know how this got on this bank, whatever. I can pretty much bet they did a job for one of those big four. They signed away their rights. I can bet that, right? If they did it one under the old generation where there was no contract or anything like that, you could sue. There's still a lawsuit. You can sue them, right? So that's the first thing that talent want to check. If they see their voice being used on, some little voice bank somewhere, did you do any AI jobs? Grab that contract and read it.
Yeah.
All right. That's number one. So you don't really have to worry too much about people, even though you only need 1 to 3 minutes now.
Right.
Of a sample of your voice to take it and use it. You don't really have to worry too much about people doing that without your permission because it's illegal.
Right.
So you have recourse. You can come to me, come to it, somebody that does copyright infringement, somebody, an attorney that's an entertainment attorney that understands AI. You can bring a lawsuit. You can get get it removed, get the voice removed, by cease and desist because it's illegal.
Right.
So what voice talent, what we're seeing now is I'm starting to see that these stories, but it's because of people that sign those contracts.
Blindly, so just get
they
to
didn't
work.
Understand what they're signing.
Yeah.
So now, boom. Wait a minute. Well, that's because they didn't think about it at the time of the consequences now. So you got to dig deeper on these things. When you start seeing these things, dig deeper to see what the source is. Because if the source is not a contract that you sign your rights away on, you still have a case. You can still. That's what Bev's standing. That's her case.
Right.
That was her exact case. So, all right, that's number one. So, how do you protect yourself? I would put in all your contracts now. So something that says that the job is only, the recording is only for this particular job. You can't use it for other things. You can't sell to third parties. And you can even mention that you can't use it for cloned voices, synthetic voices, machine learning, and, you spell it out. So the National Association of Voiceover Artists has a rider. What do you think wrote it?
I have to make a confession to you, counselor. I offer a paragraph almost to put in the bottom of contracts on my Discord server that was written by chatgpt.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know what? And actually, I'll send it to you to maybe give it a bulletproof eye. But
they probably stole it from my writer.
That could very well be. And you know what? I'd take that as a compliment. Where are you? But so please continue on.
Yeah. So, that writer covers everything that you
say something that says you can't use this for generative AI purposes. It can only be used for the thing that you're hiring me for now.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Can't be used for any other purpose other than spell it out. This job, this period of time, whatever. You also, if you wanted to, you can throw something in there saying, because I saw another big posting, a couple of postings by audiobook narrators where they had signed a contract. I forget the name of the company, but now it's Spotify bought it out. And that's where it came to light.
Findaway Voices.
Findaway Voices, yes.
Yeah.
There was a clause in there saying that the talent were, by doing the job and signing the contract, allowing machine learning.
Yeah.
With their voices. And you can throw it in there in the contract, but machine learning is different. Machine learning is not the same as
generative AI. Yeah.
Right. Cloned voices are synthetic because all machine learning is where one computer is just listening to how humans speak naturally and
Yeah.
teaching another computer.
Yeah, it is not actually using the voice to generate another voice. It is using a voice that it's listening to learn about speech patterns and then teach another computer to do something different. It is not taking the bits and bytes and repurposing them in whole or toto in order to generate something else.
Correct. So those and that things happens behind the scenes. So those things that happens, it's happening right now as we speak.
Yes.
The internet's being scoured, YouTube's being scoured, and that other machines are learning how humans, how their speech patterns are, and how they speak, and emotions, and all that stuff. So
sleep tight, folks.
But it's just like ChatGPT or Jasper. That's how those work.
Yeah, it's invisible to most of us most of the time until you look.
Right, it scours the internet. It comes up with a paragraph, and they're not, the paragraph probably is not going to be a full paragraph of someone else's work, because that would be infringement.
Right.
It's probably just going to be 3 or 4 words.
Here, stuck
all
together.
Pieced together. Right,
yep.
Exactly. So that's how AI, that's how it works. That's how the technology works. The same for artwork. It's all, if you want a picture of I want a picture of a dog.
Yeah.
It doesn't like pull one picture back. It pieces a whole bunch of
exactly
dogs and puts it together, and you come up with a new
dog with 5 legs.
Dog with 5 legs.
And the Getty image logo that did not get properly sifted out of some original piece of original photograph used to generate the new image.
Sure, it could be. So, but the point is, it's all done behind the scenes. So there's really nothing we can do to prevent that. Because that's all we can do is prevent. We can put in our contract that we don't want our files used for that purpose, and that's fine. But the more important legal aspect for me is them using your actual files to create another voice to generate income somewhere, or create mischief or rip someone off.
The audiobook industry is the one that is most under fire and most exposed right now, because as you were saying, with a number of these generative AI platforms, it literally only takes 90 seconds of a voice. And who is providing a clearer, more well-pronounced, well-delivered read than an audiobook narrator? You can literally just take 2 minutes or 5 minutes of an audiobook read, dump it into a generative AI platform, and this could be an audiobook that you bought yourself and feed it in there. Admittedly, if in doing so, you are technically using that platform against its terms of service, which explicitly state you shall not use any recordings other than that of your own voice or someone under your legal purview. But that's what happened to me. That's what happened to another of my VO compatriots on YouTube. People will take this, will do this, and it's already happening. It has already happened past tense.
Yes, and that part's illegal. Like I said, that's still illegal. So, and I understand the worry that audiobook narrators have, but I think it's a little overplayed. Because think about it, Amazon spent thousands and millions and trillions of dollars to create their own bank of voices.
Right.
They paid all these people for these contracts. So why wouldn't they just go to Amazon? Why wouldn't they go to their audiobook, Audible, and just create voices that way? Like, why wouldn't they have just done? Why would they pay all that money to create a bank?
Right.
If they already had the files. So I don't think that. I mean, obviously, it could happen for some of the smaller companies, some of the more unscrupulous companies,
and I think
the bigger companies.
that's where we're seeing it.
I don't think you have to worry about it from the big companies.
We're talking about the second, third tier developers who honestly, what they're doing is the same tech model that we've seen for the last 20 years, which is Wild West, get in there, work fast, break stuff, come up with something cool, get bought out by somebody else.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They're going to need to do it legally, because this is clearly, I mean,
because buying somebody's legal problems is not necessarily the strongest strategy for a giant tech company. Is buy somebody and then find out, wait, you did what? So, that I hope is working a little in our favor.
Right.
Where do you see us as an industry? We're coming up on time here, and I want to make sure that I respect yours. where do you see us going as, you know, and I guess we're going to have to look at this as two industries. We're going to have to look at it as the industry of those players who are represented, who are, you know, in SAG-AFTRA or are, you know, aligned with NAVA and working at that level. And then also the independent level, the home VO workers who are probably not SAG-AFTRA and are doing all their contract work and their negotiations themselves. Where do you think we're headed as an industry, and what are some of the simple steps that we can take to ensure that we're not going to regret the next couple years?
So I think that talent can embrace the technology because, like you said, like the last 20 years, people
Right.
that get in on the ground floor, they make their money at it or set up their platform and get out, get sold. Voice talent can do the same kind of thing now. Like they can willingly partner up with a company to clone their voice, right? And then the companies that are legit are partnering up with talent, cloning their voice, paying a percentage of future income that the cloned voice generates. So you can have your cloned voice work for you while you're sleeping.
You can stay outside of your booth and you're still working.
Right, you can do your Pacific Rim stuff without having to get up 4 o'clock in the morning.
Amen.
Right?
That sounds fantastic to me, actually.
And get paid residuals, right? So that's one way that voice talent can embrace the technology.
So you build a model to get paid on your voice being used, and then kind of build your financial model to subsist and live off of residuals instead of active rise and grind, hustle, VO, get in there, get the job done, all that business.
Right. Yeah, Reese Beecher's hiring talent now. To create speeches that were done, to create lectures, whatever. Whoever the client hires them, and they have a sample of the original voice, and then Reese Beecher will hire talent to go into the studio and record.
And that's a legitimate use and a legitimate process. They're not being shifty about it at all.
Exactly. Well, that's a way that they're hiring talent. Like traditionally,
right?
And, the talent get paid pretty well for that is also. So, and then I just want to address the deep fake thing.
Sure.
So Reese Beecher is legit.
Yeah.
Like you said. So when I hear the term deep fake, I think of it as illegal activity.
Yeah. Fake, it's built into the word fake. Yeah.
So it's a deep fake, but it's legal. It's a legal deep fake. So, instead of just like putting a fake Tom Cruise up on TikTok,
we need to come up with a neutral term that describes this phenomena. A deep simulation, I guess, would be a more legitimate thinking of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a totally legitimate use, and it's actually a great.
It's a fascinating technology. Yeah.
Yeah. So and this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the very, very beginning. This is one of the uses that AI is going to be when it comes to voice talent and synthetic voices. But who knows where it's going to go?
Well, and I think that's the big question: is who knows where it's going to go? And right now, we're all in this place of. We don't know where it's going to go. We just know it's going to go somewhere that we don't expect, and it's probably going to go a lot faster than we expected.
Yeah. So, just to give general advice to talent, I already gave the legal advice.
Right.
How to protect yourself. General advice is just stay on top of this. Educate yourself. Don't be scared. Like there's so many talent that are scared of it and they don't want to do anything to do with it, but they need to have something to do with it. Make themselves part of that technology because it is going to be another way to generate revenue in the future, just like when the internet was created way back when.
Right.
This is cool. I can send an email, an electronic mail through AOL. Wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
Who thought that was going to lead to the primary way that you get your movies
right
now? Right. You don't even go to the theaters for most of the movies. They're streamed. So it's going to be the same thing with AI. It's going to, the technology is going to, there's going to be present opportunities all along the way for talent to make money at it.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand that neither you nor I nor most people who are really kind of with their ear down to the rail of this, we're not saying go back to wearing wooden shoes. We're not saying to go and burn down the flour mills. We're saying that you need to be proactive and aware and educated about something that it's not that it's going to impact your path. This is shaping all our paths now. This is something that is currently happening. Do you want to be aware of its progress as we move into the future? Or do you want to be a year on going, well, I wish I'd have done that differently? It's the post and pre approach to your own career and your own progress in it.
So how many people said that about the internet?
Right.
How many people said, I wish I was Jeff Bezos and set up an Amazon.com? Like, how many people said that? It's because they were like, oh, the internet, this is just a fad. I don't know what
it's not that good yet. It's not that significant an issue yet. And I've been standing here looking to the world like my hair's on fire, which is kind of a complicated thing for me to say to people. But, that's all I'm trying to get people to understand is that this isn't going to happen. This is a thing that is happening. And you need to be paying attention. You don't need to be obsessed with it, and you don't need to really abjectly fear it. But you can't be standing there with your eyes closed going, I hope this doesn't affect me.
Well, so the thing is, it's happening now is the visibility of it.
Right.
Because
it's
the internet,
been happening.
The internet was out and it was visible from the beginning. So everyone saw it.
Yeah.
Internet, the AI has been out since, like I said, since 2016 when I did, even before that, when I did the Bixby voice.
Right.
So it's been around this is now where we're actually just starting to see it. But it's almost at the end of the technology. Like the technology, I'm sure it'll still evolve.
Right.
But the technology's gone a long way in the last
this is the fruit of the last decade's worth of development. And just because you don't hang out with a lot of nerds and engineers doesn't mean that it's not a thing. We're now seeing the fruits of their labor.
Right. Exactly. Now it's starting to be implemented to the public, so it can't go away. It's been around. This has been 10 years where they've been working on this. It's not just going to go.
Yeah, nobody should be surprised. Everybody's surprised, but nobody should be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we need to figure out ways to work with it, make money from it, and not try to defeat it because that's. I mean, I understand the wanting to defeat. As a voice talent, but to me, it's kind of
it's a fool's errand. Yeah, it's a fool's errand. Well, Robert, I really deeply appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us, both as a talent and as a bard attorney who really not only understands this but has dealt with this in the real world already. And would you please do me a favor and once again let people know where they can contact you and where they can find you and find the book and all the other relevant Dog and Pony Show elements?
Yeah, absolutely. Best place to reach me for law is my website, robsigesq.com, robsigesq.com. My acting site's robpaglia.com. You can get the book at either Amazon, the Amazon edition, the Kindle edition, or you can go to voiceoverlegal.com, which has the paperback or the PDF version.
Robert, thank you again so much for coming on the show and talking with us. And, in the future, if I got questions, I know who I'm coming to. And I feel a little bit of comfort knowing that, me and my audience has heard from somebody, as I said, who actually has already started dealing with some of these AI issues, not only as Robert Sciglimpaglia, Esquire, but as Rob, the voice actor, who has spent his time down in the trenches with us as well. But everybody, until next time, this is Andrew Scott. This is the Narrowband Broadcast Network. This has been Booth to Booth. That is Robert Sciglimpaglia. I am your host, Andrew, as I said, and we will see you in the booth, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
From the beautiful Pacific Northwest, this has been Booth to Booth with Andrew Scott. Booth to Booth is a Narrowband Broadcast Network production in association with AndrewScottMedia.com. Andrew Scott, executive producer. Our theme music was written and produced by Ron Kajawa. Website design and maintenance by Vicano Creative. Christopher Vicano, webmaster. Available at VicanoCreative.com. Audio and video production by Andrew Scott. Available at AndrewScottMedia.com. Got topic ideas, questions, or comments for the show? Email us at patchin@booth2booth.com or by simply clicking the link in the description. On behalf of host Andrew Scott, I'm Gwen Steele. From our booth to yours, thanks for joining us. See you next time on Booth to Booth.
NBBN, the Narrowband Broadcast Network. The focus is on you.